Hello. First thing to point out is that I forgot to turn off the fan when I was recording this, and that's interfered with the sound. So I'm doing a commentary over the top, which I hope will come out okay. So I thought today I'd look at some 3D printed tanks and what I do once they come off the printer. So we've got a couple of 1/48 scale. This is a white Scout car, and this is a Staghound Mark 1, and they've just come off the printer. Just by comparison, the grey one is a 1/56 scale Staghound against the 1/48 next to it in blue. So this is how they're printed. They come off the printer like this with all sorts of support material. All the stringy bits and the bits around the wheels and underneath the turret that you can see there, that's support material, and that's necessary in order to support parts of the structure that aren't touching the base of the printer. So once they come off, we've got to remove all that support structure and prepare the model for sending out or for undercoating. Now these particular ones were done for a customer, and I think at this point I was explaining why all the supports are in place, because obviously it would be far easier just to print the model, take it off the printer and spray it, and that's it. So the support stuff is really there to go underneath stuff which doesn't touch the base plate. So in this example you see the gun barrel. If there was no support underneath it, the printer would get to that point, start to print the barrel, and it would go along the length of the barrel, and it had the plastic coming out of the nozzle would have nothing to land on, so it would just fall to the floor, and you just get a droopy plastic mess. So the software that prepares the file for printing builds up a kind of framework underneath, so that when it gets to printing stuff that overhangs, the printer has actually something to print on. So it prints along that sort of diagonal line that's built up from the bottom. So it builds it up from the bottom of the plate, line by line by line, until it gets to the point where the gun barrel is going to print, and then the barrel prints on a working surface. And that's the same for any unsupported part of the model. It has to have some kind of support structure. So this is just a quick look at the work involved, and the printing of the models itself is quite easy and not time consuming. You set up the printer going in the morning, leave it running all day or all night, and when you come back your model's printed. But the work begins really now, so that you've got to start building up or removing all the supports, so that the model can be prepared for painting. And here I'm just taking off the support structure. It does come off reasonably easy in the main, but it does leave some stuff behind which needs cleaning up. And the biggest problem with removing support material is the propensity to cause damage to the actual model if you're not very careful. So you can see under the gun here it's got support structure. You can see that little piece going up to the bottom of the ammo canister. However, that's right next to an aerial. So there's two aerials on the back of the turret. And if you're not careful, when you're removing that support structure, you can remove the aerial. And of course, if you then damage the model, unless it's a really clean break and you can super glue it back on, you've really got to reprint it. because I don't like broken models going out. So one little slip of the snips, or pulling too hard on the support structure to rip it off, can ruin the whole model. And some of these models take sort of 18 hours to print, and if you've mucked up a track or broken a part off an 18-hour model, then of course that's a lot of wasted time and plastic to reprint it. So here I'm just trying very carefully to remove the supports without causing damage. This is the time that takes the most when sorting these models out. As I say, the printing is not labour intensive, and that just does that in the background, usually while I'm at work or while I'm in bed. And the time intensive part is actually preparing the model once it comes off. So although for customers I'll tell them when the models start printing, it sometimes seems like a little while before they're actually ready for posting, and this is the reason why. So a model like this maybe take 10-15 minutes, but some of the more complicated models can take a lot longer. For instance, the Katusha rocket launcher truck is such a finely detailed model, particularly around the rocket launchers and the rails, that it can easily take well over an hour and possibly 2 hours just to get all these supports out, because it's such a finely detailed model with all the rails and all the supports between the rails. It's really easy to damage once you're doing this, removing the supports. Of course, you know, if you're only charging 10-15 quid for a model, but you're having to spend 2 hours, you can see that the remuneration isn't quite as good as it might seem. As with all the models on the Paint and Glue website, I don't send them out unprepared, and I don't expect customers to have to do this themselves to save a couple of quid. It's all part of the price, and all the models go out properly prepared and just about ready for undercoating. And you know, you might have to do a tiny bit of cleaning up. Some people like to use a sander and try and get rid of some of the more obvious lines. Some people spray it 2 or 3 times. There is some kind of compound in existence which you can paint over it, and it does do something to the lines. I've not tried it myself, but some people recommend it. So I think we've got to the stage now where most of the structure's been removed. Just getting the last final bits out, and then I have to go on to remove some of the stuff that you can't get out with the snips. So some of that stuff above the wheel and underneath the mudguard will come out, but quite often the gap is smaller than that, and the snips won't cut it, so to speak. So at that stage I tend to move over to a knife, although you've got to be really, really careful. I wear slash-proof gloves when I get the knife out, and that's because I've cut myself so many times. Indeed, on one occasion I slipped with a scalpel, stabbed myself in the hand, and the scalpel blade went all the way in up to the hilt, just in that fleshy bit between the bottom of your thumb and the bottom of your forefinger, and I had to be stitched up. So you've got to be really careful. I personally wouldn't recommend using a knife because it's quite dangerous. So that's the waste plastic that goes in the bin. It is compostable, but it needs to go into a system that uses heat. So there are facilities around that use heat to make, I don't know what they do with it, fertiliser and all the rest of it. But if your local authority doesn't use such a system, then it's not recyclable. So unfortunately this lot goes in the bin. I've got no idea what I was talking about when I was making this at this point. I think I was looking around for the other one that I'd prepared earlier that I had completely cleaned up, but I couldn't find it. So these are the complete models. Oh, there's that 156 model that I did earlier. Unfortunately, I was in such a rush to get it done for a photo session that I missed a few bits on it. So that's about it. I thought you might want to see the work involved in preparing one of the 3D prints. It's not a simple question of just sticking it on the printer and popping it off at the other end and putting it in a box and sending it off. There is quite a bit of work, and so if the model takes a little bit longer than you might have thought from the time it starts printing, this is the reason why. Once printed, it then goes into a queue to be cleared up. So thanks very much for watching.